Hello and welcome to Cosmic Dream Sanctuary. This is a case study with John H., 3 UFO sightings, answers, and out-of-body experiences. So the subject of this case study is John, who is a creative with word, image, and concept. He has had several UFO and ET experiences and wanted to explore. He and I initially got in contact with one another through Facebook when I was offering BQH sessions as part of my training. I had been trained in depth hypnosis, dream studies, and things like that, but I wanted to engage with the quantum healing modality that comes out of the work of Dolores Cannon through the QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique, and then through Candace Craw Goldman's modality beyond quantum healing. So I engaged with him as a way to practice, and he enjoyed the session and had scheduled a second session with me. The initial intention for his first experience was around providing insight for UFO experiences. He had 3 UFO sightings, which he'll describe in the case study interview. And the intention for the second session is to deepen his astral projection experiences. So we had 2 hypnotic interactions. One, again, both cases being the beyond quantum healing style experience, which is about a 3 to 5 hour experience. We have a consultation, we set up an intention, we create a list of questions that we would like to have addressed through the work of the BQ8 session, and so we did that with both cases. The phenomena involved with this case is UFO sightings, and that also includes some alleged extraterrestrial contact experience. And I say alleged because we get into the understanding as to what that contact was through the hypnosis, and John will speak about that. There's also the phenomena of astral projection, which is what he has been working on. And astral projection is a way of sending out your consciousness in a vehicle of consciousness, actually, that can explore and move. A lot of people say this is what we do when we dream. This is very similar to near-death experience or out-of-body experience. And then we also have an experience, phenomena of channeled or telepathic communication within the hypnosis session itself. And so we were able to contact kind of an intelligence that was associated with the UFO sightings that provided insight around that. And again, John questions whether or not this is aspects of his own self. It is an actual alien being in the world having telepathic communion with him. So these are questions that he has and works through in the process of discernment. So the outcomes here are a hypnotic experience that is meaningful in its own right. So he found such meaning in our first hypnotic experience that he scheduled a second one. He also came to an integrative understanding of the 3 UFO sightings. Now, whether or not these explanations are relevant in a historical kind of space-time fact type way requires additional investigation, but it provided a sense of integration, a sense of completeness, and a sense of wholeness in his own being and memories of these experiences. Another outcome was connection with potent inner symbology. So he will mention a tree in the interview, the case study interview, and this is a kind of image that is central to him in his exploration and development of hypnosis and development of himself as a psycho-spiritual being. We have had another outcome, which is connection with apparent ET intelligence. This is one of the more fascinating aspects or enjoyable aspects of this encounter, was a sort of back and forth style conversation with an alleged ET intelligence that was behind the UFO sightings. And then again, there's a deepening of the dream experience related to astral projection. So that was one of the outcomes he sought for. and achieved in some way, shape, or form. So there's a few observations I would put forward here. One is a humility as a cause for the missing time experience, right? So oftentimes we imagine that the missing time, you see a UFO, there's some suspicion that something happened, right? And you can't remember what that is. Sometimes we think that is caused by magic devices, by the ETs, by hypnosis on their part, or through trauma, a repression, trauma response type thing. But in this case, it's a sense of why me? Why would I be so special to be contacted by extraterrestrial intelligences? Why would I be so special to be a subject, the study of extraterrestrial beings? And so these are questions that John worked with in this interview and through the hypnotic experiences. He really does come to an inner sense of discernment that helps interpret confused imagery. So one of the things I'll point to in the interview is that this ET intelligence, right, that was associated with these historical sighting events that were corroborated by another witness in some of the cases. He connects with this, but in the guise of he's in this dreamlike experience in the hypnosis. He's on top of a mountain, and this man comes to him in the guise of like an old-timey trapper, like a fur trapper. And so, but there's a communication and there's insight that's offered from this trapper who he names Aaron, which may or may not be the name of the being, right? And this character, Aaron, provides a definite understanding as to what each of those three UFO sightings were about. Now, John, in this interview, will go through a process of discernment about how it feels to have this information. So it's important to know because oftentimes we come with a misconception that regression hypnosis yields physical memories. And in this case, it's not actually true. There's no physical memory of being at the top of a mountain with a trapper. It doesn't make any sense, but as a dream image that communicates insight and wisdom and understanding, it's very potent. And using a process of discernment, John has come to an experience of integration or closure or wholeness around those understandings. The final observation I'll offer is that non-attachment yields understanding. So, in John's case, he was very open-handed about how he related to the hypnosis experience. He was simply exploring, seeing how it would work for him, seeing if he could get some insight. That would be great. It doesn't actually have to be memory. It could be something else. So he was in a sort of flow state with this, a sense of non-attachment, and really came to understanding that sort of transcends this conceptual, historical, space-time understanding that oftentimes we yearn for. And so I commend his courage in approaching these matters. And I really do appreciate his testimony here. I really do feel that he is exemplary of many, many types of contact experience, or many, many people in this world now where there has been some experience in the past, right? A UFO sighting, a contact experience. But he comes from a generation above mine, so a generation that has been more steeped in a sense of misinformation, a sense of ridicule around sharing these experiences. And so he's had a few of these, and then now coming to a period in his life where he's willing to explore, he explores and discovers there's insight and understanding beneath those experiences that kind of have sort of been a loose thread in his heart or mind or something like that. So my asking him to participate in this was really, I feel he can offer an example of really setting aside any of those kind of 20th century notions about ET contact and having the courage to explore in this really open and creative way. So how this works, how these case studies work, is that they are offered as stories in meaningful ways. So the purpose of case studies here is to share stories that may be meaningful. It's to educate viewers about hypnosis and ET contact, and it's also to inspire viewers to go on their own journey for healing, insight, and transformation. This journey is a co-participatory journey into the unknown. Just like I was saying, John didn't hold on to very strong attachments to what the experience would be like. And nor do I know where things are going as I offer this space. And so it's literally and truly a journey together into the unknown. And we relate to each other like fellow travelers. And so that's the invitation here. I'm sharing these case studies as a way to provide you information as to what that journey might feel like and why you might go on that. Final thing I want to say and speak about is regression hypnosis. There's a lot of misconceptions about what regression hypnosis is and can do. But when we look to scientific studies, when I look to my training as a hypnotist, I understand that regression hypnosis is not directly memory or the reliving of memory. This is very clear, and I communicate this on my websites. I communicate this in any of the material that I offer. It is not directly uncovering memory, nor is it reliving of memory, right? As best I can understand, it is something like the induction of an intentional dream. So I invite you to relax and even get into a sleepy state of consciousness. And from there, I provide suggestions that you will have a dreamlike experience that addresses your intention for the session. Like a dream, hypnosis might involve memory and other psi phenomena. So we don't know, but they might involve that. And oftentimes, like a dream, the hypnotic session requires participation for interpretation. And John does a wonderful job in terms of participating in his interpretation of the sessions. He's gone through a period of establishing astral projection practice. He's worked with these materials in his thinking and I hope his writing. And so in his art and things like that. So he's really participated. He's really worked with a sense of discerning around where that's at. And so he's come to understanding that feels very solid in his body. And so I'll invite you to sense into your own body when you feel him talking about some of the insights that come out, even though we cannot come to the conclusions that these were historical events or evidence or something like that. You can actually feel what he's talking about and the connections of insight and understanding that he's offering. So with that, I'll simply briefly introduce the context here of the interview. I asked him to speak on his experience and participate in this interview primarily for that purpose. We have a series of discussions or a series of questions about his experience. The sensation of hypnotic amnesia is something to talk about, right? So you go into a trance state, you have these experiences, you think you might remember sort of thing. We have a recording that helps us afterwards because we forget things. I, as a hypnotist, forget a tremendous amount. And in fact, when I reached out to him, I totally forgot about the explanation of the 3 sightings, which is one of the more fascinating things that came out of this session in the interview. So without further ado, let's watch the case study interview with John H. Great. So thank you for being here. So you and I have worked together in 2 sessions, 2 BQH style sessions. So that's beyond quantum healing. That's based in the modality of, or the tradition of quantum healing that comes from Dolores Cannon. It has an understanding that you can go within yourself to find wisdom, healing, insight, and transformation. These experiences are somewhere between 2 hours and 4 hours long. We conduct like a conversation, we establish an intention, we have an experience, and then there's a period of integration. So you got in contact with me through when I started training with BQH. I said, I want to work with people. I was already trained in depth hypnosis. So this was an additional modality I was adding, and you volunteered kindly to do that. You had some experiences that you wanted to explore. And I was hoping you could speak about first your intention with the session, or the actually, before we do that, the extraordinary experiences that you wanted to explore. So
Sure. So I wanted to find out. I'd had many experiences that I didn't understand the purpose of, and I was wondering if I had been abducted, because I had sightings and memories that seemed to coincide with people that are abducted. And so I just wanted to find out. I wasn't scared about it or traumatized, but I was just curious more than anything else. And so I contacted you because I thought hypnosis is probably the best way to find out exactly what happened or the extent of what my experience was, or if I could get any more information out.
yeah. What were those signs that you looked to that of suspected abduction? What were those clues?
Um, well, in my adult life, I'd seen UFOs 3 times, twice with my wife when we both witnessed it, and once by myself. So the first one, my wife and I were in Chicago, and I had a high up apartment, so I could see the skyline, had a good view of Chicago. And we're both looking out at the view one day closer to evening, and we saw this interesting orange glowing ribbon in the sky. And it was interesting because we couldn't see a plane in front of it, so it wasn't like a plane carrying a message thing. And it seemed to have its own motivation, like it wasn't a plume after something, it was an actual ribbon moving. And the when we knew we were seeing something really different, it made a 90-degree turn in the sky. And as it did, like here's the front of the ribbon, here's the back of it. It went like this, and it was the same length and traveled 90 degrees. And my wife and I look at each other like, what the heck? And my wife is very familiar with lots of different aircraft, and she said that's nothing I've ever seen. And we watched it until for quite a while, actually, and then it finally just decided to accelerate quickly and was gone. And so I had the idea to call and report the UFO. And this was back in 1980 something. And so this is before the government would admit that there was anything there. So I called one department, and they shuttled me to another department that supposedly was supposed to take reports of UFOs. And they wouldn't take a report, and they just kind of discouraged us from continuing any further. And it wasn't like they were, covering it up necessarily. They were just ignoring it or considering it as bogus. But we knew we saw it, and we both saw it, and both commented at the time, like, "Wow, why is it doing that?" So it wasn't like it was an illusion or anything. We could see it.
Yeah.
So that was the first one. The second one, I was on my own. I was driving down a stretch of highway, and over the top of my car, and it was very silent, but it wasn't that high off the ground, so it should have made noise. But it was a dark night, and it was a triangular shape with the point of the triangle going forward. And in each corner were white lights that were constant. And the center was a red light that glowed like that up and down. And it had like a grid or something over it, so that it wasn't, just the light. It had a structure around the light, if that makes sense. And it was right over my car. And I even stuck my head out of the car while I was driving to look up at it, because I thought, what the heck? And it was flat black, and only because it was close to me, you could kind of see the outline. And you could see where the stars weren't there, where the shape was, kind of a thing. But it was as dark as the night. and it was so slow, and it was like it was following my car, about my car speed, I'll say. And I was kind of surprised because no of the other drivers seemed to notice it. Nobody else seemed to have
Hmm.
any reaction to it, just me. And then I watched, and then I was heading for an overpass. And by the time I went through the overpass, it had gone. I don't know if it accelerated really fast or just blinked out or whatever, but I didn't see it after that. But it affected me a lot because I could see it over me. It was like the size of like 2 football fields, maybe. It was huge and it was low. So, I couldn't make out any details except the outline being triangular and the lights, sorry.
Yeah.
So that was the second one. That was by myself. I couldn't prove that to anybody. And then the third one, my wife and I lived in the previous house that was up on the second floor, and behind our house was a scruff of trees, and beyond that was a field, like they grew corn and stuff like that. And it was the middle of the night, and my wife woke me up because she goes, "Hey, what's that?" And so it was winter or fall, so there's no leaves on the trees. So the trees were just the branches coming up. So those were dark. But behind those, we saw a craft that I would say was roughly the size of a van,
Hmm.
like on a road. It was also silent, and it was as much as you could tell behind the trees. It was cylindrical, and it had different color lights. And we were watching it, and the way it moved was it went down like this, and then over, and then up like that. Instead of flying this way, and it was moving slow enough to be um, hovering enough to be a helicopter, but it wasn't making any noise, and it wasn't shaped like a helicopter. And so we're both at the window watching this, and my wife was kind of freaking out, and I was like, "Wow, that's cool," kind of a thing. And then after a certain point, it kind of revolved on the cylinder, so the lights were pointing different directions, and then it just lifted up and was gone.
Yeah.
So that was the third one that my wife was there at. So those are the actual sightings that I had. But I didn't
Wonderful.
have. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. What about so that those are three very interesting sightings that are characteristic, right? The anomalous movement, the interesting aspect, the seeing, some people seeing it, some people not seeing it. Those are all common kind of patterns actually with the sightings. And then in terms of the step towards the suspicion or intuition around abduction experience, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah.
How
So
do you get from there to there? Yeah.
yeah. So those were the concrete things that I saw. The non-concrete things, which are what made me wonder, was I have a memory, two memories of when I was a young kid. I don't remember the exact age, but one I was really young, um, and I was in my bed, and it was at night, and I saw in my mind what looked like a chimpanzee, that kind of shape with the shoulders up and the arms down,
Yeah.
and it was a silhouette, and it was coming towards me, and I freaked out and started screaming. And then my dad rushed into the room, turned on the lights, and when he turned on the lights, the shape disappeared. And sorry, my phone's dinging.
Sure.
Um, so I wondered about that at the time. And then I also had a recurring dream where around that time, maybe a little bit older, where in the dream, I would look out my window and I would see this green dragon that had very large black eyes. And I remember I looked out the window and the dragon got bigger and then climbed through the window and started chasing my family and me, kind of like a cartoon chasing us. And then I was the last one. And then it reached over and tapped on my shoulder. And when it tapped on my shoulder, I woke up.
Hmm.
But the reason it stuck in my mind was I had this same dream so many times. And it was the same, almost exactly the same big black-eyed dragon outside the window, coming in the window, tapping me, and then me waking up, kind of a thing. So um, those things kind of made me wonder, did something happen when I was a kid? So that's why I was curious. I didn't have any trauma. I didn't have any, like, anything like that. Oh, and one more, I forgot about that, but that was when I was older. I was an adult, and I saw the movie Communion, and based on the Whitley Strieber book. And when they had the scene where the aliens were at the doorway and they kind of peeked around the doorway and looked in, and I had a kind of a visceral reaction to that,
Yeah.
um, of not fear so much, but of just being frozen. I saw it on the movie, and that made me wonder too. Did something happen? Oh, and there's one more. I'm sorry.
Great.
uh, I have this dream, or I think it was a dream, uh, when I was a kid, that we had a house, and right next to it was a big tree. And so in the dream, I was being levitated up through the room. I went through the roof, the ceiling, out of the roof, and was kind of hovering over our tree. And I recognized the tree from looking at it, looking down. And the tree was hyper realistic, I guess is the way to say it. I could make out every leaf. All the details were like just so clear. It was like almost impossible for me to see that clearly. And then that's all I remember. But that was another weird thing.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah, there's sounds like a series of dreams that are meaningful and potent, along with feeling states that are evoked when confronted with the imagery of the extraterrestrial, often in the form of Whitley Strieber's Communion. That this is actually a common. Maybe 1 out of 20 people I interact with go, I saw the book cover of Communion, I saw something of Communion, and I just knew. So. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why it is meaningful to share our stories, is because it helps have this experience like you just had in this dialogue, where it's like, oh, and there's yet another memory that now can kind of fold back into your consciousness. So that was like the 4th dream experience you had. And I would expect that someone watching this in the future will likely have a kind of, oh my gosh, this happened to me too. I was wondering if we could provide that experience with them by adding a little bit more detail to the green dragon that looked through the window. So oftentimes the screen, these are in the ET lore, basically, these are dreamlike figures that approach you are often called screen memories. We might see them as owls or deer or something else, but in this case, and they do share a common kind of theme. And so there may be also other green dragon people out there. So what was it, like a Western dragon or an Eastern dragon, or how might you describe that?
It was more like a cartoon dragon, because I was young at the time, so I probably would have related more to a cartoon.
Yeah.
And so it was green. I think in and of itself, it wasn't scary. It didn't look scary. It just had these really big eyes, but I didn't know what it was there for. I think that's what kind of scared me in the dream, because I looked out the window, I discovered it, and then it climbed through the window, and then I started to run away from it. But I mean, I'm an artist, so I could probably draw it. But I mean, it was just simple in the dream. It didn't have a lot of details. In fact, I don't remember it having scales like a dragon would. It was more like like a Saturday morning cartoon of a dragon.
Yeah.
If that
Great.
helps.
Thank you. We will have somebody will email me, and I'll let you know when that happens about this. I have a feeling about it, actually. So,
Okay.
Yeah. Before we talk about the hypnosis, you have mentioned a few things, a sense of feeling scared, but also a sense of not feeling scared. So I was hoping you could speak about that, because oftentimes these imagery of being chased, of sightings, of visitation, of suspected visitations have this sort of, oh my gosh, I'm out of control. Something bad must have happened. I should be scared of it. But that doesn't feel necessarily present in your experience. So
No,
why?
I don't know. Even with the dragon dream,
Yeah.
I should have been really scared, but it was now that you're saying this jogs my memory a little bit. It was more of my whole family's running, but I'm selected. That's
Hmm.
why the finger tapped me on the shoulder and I turn around and wake up. It's not so much like I get hurt. It's more like not them, but you. More like you're chosen. I tap you on the shoulder, and that, yeah, I think that once I'm tapped on the shoulder, I'm not really scared. But then I wake up.
Yep. Great. So then getting into the hypnosis session and the response to my invitation, the hey, I'm doing BQH, and then you said yes. So there was a period of time where you've had these experiences, and then something about my invitation or something about you or a combination of the two made this the right time to dive into these experiences. What are some of those characteristics that made you feel it was like the right time?
It's hard to explain, but I feel like I'm on at this point in my life, I'm on a spiritual journey of some kind, that I kind of feel like that there's more there, like
Yeah.
that uh, what my whole life has been is not everything that there is, I guess is the best way I can put it. And so I kind of felt like here I am. I've lived all this time. I've wondered about these things, whether they're a thing or not. And I've always been interested in UFOs and stuff like that. I always, have watched the shows and stuff ever since a small child. I'm big on science fiction. I write science fiction. And so, I probably shouldn't say that, but I'm big on science fiction. And so, but I've kind of let it go, I was kind of embarrassed to find out. I was both embarrassed and like, I don't have any fear about it now, but maybe if I find out about it, I will have fear about it. And then maybe that's not a good thing. But that didn't happen. I didn't, if anything, I became much more relaxed about it. So,
Great. Yeah, I'd love to talk about the session experiences for you and then dive into conclusions, like conclusions about what those experiences were, what this world is like. But to hone in onto the experiences, we had two experiences. The first one was a sort of exploration. We did work together to establish an intention. And then I was wondering if you could just describe what your experience was like that first time around.
I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. In the movies, it's always like, here, look at my watch, boom, you're under, kind of a thing. So I was kind of expecting that. But you and I talked. It was really good because you and I talked about, like you're saying, the intentions and what we were looking for. And I think you had me give you a list of questions beforehand, and which is helpful because it kind of crystallized my mind around what I really wanted to find out about.
Yeah.
And so that was very good. And then we had a discussion beforehand, which was very much like breaking the ice and getting to know each other, kind of a thing. And then I remember you asked me if I'd had a recent dream. And so I said, yeah, I had a dream about me being in an airplane and kind of being on the outside of the airplane, and the airplane opened up. I don't remember all the details of the dream. That was a while back. But then you told me to investigate that, or we talked about it. And in the process of me describing the dream, it got more detailed, and it was part of the hypnosis process, really. But it was more like from my end, it was more like I went to the dream that I just had, and I took a deeper look into the same dream, and I saw more details in it and stuff like that. And so it was kind of very interesting. I didn't really have a stop, like here's regular waking me and then here's hypnotized me. It was kind of a gradual thing that I went into. I don't know if that helps. Um, and so that was like an exercise you had me do. And then actually during the exercise, I wish we recorded that because I came up with three things about my life that I didn't know, because you were asking me, well, why is this significant or whatever?
Hmm.
And I remember realizing that, like one thing, I don't remember all of it, but I remember one thing that came out of that relaxing part was that I was remembering when I asked an exchange student to the prom, And she said yes. And then I remember that was the first time I felt like my own person and not just some fabrication of other people's expectations of me. It was like just me doing that because I wanted to do that kind of a thing,
Yeah.
or someone accepting me for me. I think that was it. And so, I mean, that was really interesting. And too bad we didn't record that part because that was actually very enlightening. And then we kind of went away from that. And then you went through the regular hypnosis part. But I can't remember what all you did to get me there.
Yeah, so oftentimes I will invite people to recollect a recent dream, and that actually is a gateway and a tool. This happens just by way of, I guess, maybe my own practice and interest in dreams, but oftentimes those are a gateway. That I felt really that was where we, like, the rubber hit the road in terms of the session. And then the afterward, that actually provides an opportunity for us to turn on the inner senses of knowing, of seeing, of feeling, of getting really comfortable with a space that you're familiar with, that we know is meaningful because it's a dream. So it's meaningful, it's healing, it's insightful, you're working with it, it's getting good information, it's kind and easy to work with because it's recent. And then after all those are in line, we go through a relaxation process. Then there's generally the quantum healing induction, which is using a metaphor of a portal to the most relevant and necessary time and place. And then you go through that experience and have an experience. And we kind of, again, deepen the experience through going through each of the senses, picking up the threads of interesting, like breadcrumbs or whatever. And that led us to the imagery of a tree, I remember, right? So
Yeah.
what do you understand about that?
Well, I didn't understand it when we first started talking about it. You said go to a place that you feel comfortable, I think, or peaceful or whatever. And I found myself sitting down on the grass, and behind me was this very large, interesting tree, and a very um, solid tree. That's the best way I can put it. And that I was just so relaxed and just sitting on the ground and leaning against the tree. Um, and then you started asking me questions about the tree and stuff like that. And I don't remember everything that I said in the session, but I think what I understood was that the tree had always been with me, that it had been there while I was going through various things in my life, that it was similar to my mother who passed away when I was 6. And that kind of energy of like a mother type energy or someone who's looking out for me, and that I didn't know it, and that all my life I'd been looked out for and I was unaware of it. And so I just felt the strength and like the oldness of a tree, the ancientness, the wisdom, the ancient wisdom of the tree, but also the nurturing of a tree. Those ideas kind of came across to me and I felt them. And I remember at one point, I don't remember if I picked up an acorn or what it was, but somehow my own skin started to turn into the bark of the tree. And I didn't understand that at the time, but you know that later on when we talked to Aaron, that kind of became clear what that was. But I didn't understand at the time, but I just felt like it was something that was very supportive and was there for me.
Yeah. So thank you. Let's go into Aaron. How did we get talking to Aaron? Who's Aaron and what did he have to say? Yeah.
Aaron is interesting. I don't remember what you asked me that got me to Aaron, but it was another portal thing, and so you had me go to somewhere, and so where I landed was on top of this mountain, sort of like a ski lodge mountain, a lot of snow and stuff like that. And it was snowy. I was walking on snow. I remember the sound of walking on snow. And you asked if there was anybody else around, I think. And I said, well, let me look. And so I looked around and I saw Aaron. And I'm not sure that Aaron is spelled like we spell Aaron. It was just the sound Aaron. So
Hmm.
maybe that's his real name. I don't know. But he looked like just a regular human person. And he was a bearded guy and looked like a trapper or a fur trader. And actually, it kind of came out that he was running his circuit of traps, and he was quite the character, and he was interesting, and um, he seemed somewhat amused that I was talking to him, if that's a way to put it. It wasn't like, he was upset, but it was just kind of like, oh, this is interesting. You're talking to me now, kind of a thing. And through the process of you asking me questions to ask Aaron and back and forth, it kind of became clear that Aaron was um, this alien creature or not of the earth, and that he had been watching my life as I've been growing up. And he had been watching, but not interfering. And that the traps that he set along the mountain to, his routine was that there was a series of people he was doing this way, and that we were part of his project, his like pet project that he was doing as a researcher. And so a lot of what he was doing was observing and not necessarily interfering with. And which also led to kind of his surprise that I was talking to him then. It was kind of like, well, I'm supposed to be observing you, not the other way around. And so he also seemed impatient. Like I was talking to him, he like, like can't really be bothered to answer these questions right now, but I'll answer them, just right now, and then I've got to go. And so that was the feeling that I had from him. And what kind of came out was that there's a bunch of people that we weren't abducted or experimented on, but we were observed because, in their view, we had the potential to become enlightened in our life. And he was very cagey about what it was enlightened about. I remember that. And I think it came out that he said something big was going to happen, and that I was going to be important in that. And I said, but not that I was going to actually cause it to happen or do anything about it, but that I was going to understand it and be enlightened by it more so than I guess other people would be, which I have a hard time believing that, to be honest. I don't think I'm any smarter than anybody else, or even more perceptive, but that's kind of the impression that he gave me when we were talking to him. And later on, after the session, I'm not talking linearly, I'm sorry, but
Oh, that's
later
great.
on, after the session, I remember I told you that I had a thought that the tree upside down was like the nervous system, and that like the branches were like the nerves and going through, and so that it kind of goes back to brain or consciousness, and that the tree is reaching down. And one thing that we asked Aaron was why he was following me, and he said because I was supposed to become another tree. So I was supposed to become another tree for someone else to guide them and support them in the life as they were going on. At least that's my understanding of what he was saying. But like I said, he wasn't very direct in some questions. Some he was, but some he wasn't. And so we asked him about the experiences we had. I'm sorry, not letting you talk or ask questions. This is
This
okay?
is perfect. It's
Okay.
perfect. Keep going. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we asked him about my actual experiences that we had talked about earlier in this recording. And he said that, yes, they've been watching me since I was a kid, and that me remembering the shape coming toward me was I woke up too quickly. So apparently I was out, and I woke up as they were getting ready to leave the bedroom, and I saw their shape and got scared. And uh, then I asked him about the different crafts that I had seen, and he clarified that the triangle craft was not alien, that it's part of our military has reverse engineered alien technology, and that the triangle crafts are really like US military or something. That was the impression he gave me. But he said the other things were. And he said the small van size thing that we'd seen in the trees was that he was leaving. That was actually him. It was a one person craft,
Hmm.
and that's why it was small. And he had come to observe, and then my wife had waken up before we were supposed to wake up, and then we saw it out in the field. That seemed to be what it's saying, but I don't know. It was just kind of strange. It was very benevolent, I should say. it wasn't like he was looking at us like a guinea pig as much as um, I'm really interested in these group of humans, and I feel like they're going to do something later that's important. So, but it works against my own humility and my ability to believe that I'm not that important. So I don't know how that's going to work out.
That's actually the sense of humility, the human humility is I actually in the future I think I will write an essay as like humility, human humility as the cause of missing time or repression, because this is actually in my personal experience, not necessarily in my reading of other case studies, is one of the causes of the missing time experiences is the interactions with the ETs or extra dimensionals or whatever. They're psychic in nature in some way, shape, or form, and they see us as we truly are, and we don't see ourselves in that way yet. And so there's a difference of frequency or something like that. So unless you're willing to go, maybe I can be a source of nurturance or guidance for another person, like that tree for you, unless you're willing to accept that possibility, you push away what they have to say. So that was a surprise to me actually this year when I started deeply working with missing time experiences, is this sense of it's not traumatic necessarily. It's this sense of self-image is more important than past trauma or potential past trauma, something like that. Um,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. In hearing you, I do want to note or like talk a little bit about uh, a term called hypnotic amnesia. Because so oftentimes people go into trance experience, have an experience, interact, come back up and out. And I also have that experience. So it's been a blessing to hear you speak in detail about what you remember. You remember actively more than I remember of this session. So I'm like, yes, I knew Aaron was important. I knew there was a contact there, and I didn't remember he explained the nature of those three sightings to you. So
Yeah.
that's absolutely beautiful. Is there anything else you wanted to say about those sessions before we? I guess we did a second session that we should talk a little bit about, but anything about this first session?
Yeah. I want to say that I think in this first session, one of the feelings that I had, and you and I had talked about it afterwards, which is I was saying these things and I didn't feel like I was under, but I was definitely under. But I would say something. I would say, I don't know if that's me making that up or if this is really coming through or whatever. And I remember one point, I don't know if it was in the first session or the second session, but at one point you said, all right, let me talk to your higher self now. And when I responded, it was definitely not me. It was, or the me that I think of as me. And the voice changed a little bit when I responded or he responded or whatever. So that was kind of a surprise. But what I found was you would ask me questions, I would answer them. I wouldn't be necessarily thinking about my answers, but they would kind of come out. But then I would doubt those answers and I would kind of pull back and say, that can't be right. This is surely not what I'm thinking, or this is not this. So I had a lot of skepticism while it was happening, but it was obviously happening. So I just want to share that to anybody who goes through this. Is I had that really weird moment of self skepticism. It's like, am I under? Is this really happening or whatever? But ultimately, I think it was true. It's just that I wasn't used to being hypnotized, so it was like a new experience for me.
Yeah. It's common. It's a common experience to go, am I making this up? When I go under hypnosis myself, I go, am I really making this up? And I go, I just need to set that aside. But is there any advice you'd give to someone who's approaching that, how to relate with that sense of self-skepticism?
I don't know because when I was saying things that were relatively normal or in metaphor, I remember many times when we were talking about the tree, I said the tree is a metaphor. And I understood that. I understood that the tree wasn't an actual tree, a tree meant something. And I could feel that from a different level, right? But then some of the other things I would say, that's bizarre. So I must be making that up. And I remember in the first session, you had me go through a portal, and I landed on another planet, and the planet had a lot of buildings, and I went in to see a doctor, and the doctor used like an electrode, and he stuck my brain in 3 places, and then just started to walk out of the room. And you said, no, ask him what he did. And so I asked the doctor what you did, and he said, well, I'm healing. I know one of them was anger, and I don't remember what the other two are now that I'm having to talk about it, but there were things about my life that needed work. I think self-esteem perhaps was another one. And it was like it was identifying 3 things that I really need to work on to become a better person. And it was interesting because, once that came out of my mouth, I realized, oh yeah, that's true. And also not something I would say on my own in a normal circumstance. So it let me know that, yeah, this is coming out of somewhere that is I don't usually tap into. And so I knew that that was, some deep dive into what I was thinking. But there are other things that just seem odd to me. And like, I think part of them too was conversations with Aaron. I just thought, this is bizarre, that because like you're saying, I rejected the idea deep down that I would be special or of any concern for study. I just view myself as a normal human being. So when those would come through internally, I'm going, wow, that can't be right. But I would still say them, but I would say that I must be making this shit up. This must be what this is happening or something. So it was those type of things. But I think if you do go under and you go with it, go under, just go with it, because whatever comes out is from somewhere in you. And if you feel like you're making it up to teach yourself something or to enlighten yourself about something. So yeah, it might be that you're making up. I'm making up a metaphor of a tree because that's how I'm understanding this concept, right? It doesn't mean it's a real tree, but that's how my psyche is going to understand it better. So I think some things that might come out of you would be surprising and maybe not maybe something you're skeptical of, but it has a purpose, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the biggest concerns, or not concerns, but things I like talking about is a sense of discernment about experience. Because in this one session, you've interacted with a metaphor, you've gone to a different planet, you've talked to Aaron, who's actually a scientist, but he's coming in the guise of a trapper. It's dreamlike, it's not dreamlike. But would you say, and he provided an explanation of those 3 events. Do you accept that explanation? How do you interpret that? What's your process of discernment? Yeah.
I accept them. Because it certainly explains the small craft in the field, because otherwise I have no reason why it would be in this field. It was just a field of wheat. And in fact, it was winter or whatever. So there was no crop there. It was just bare field and trees. And I couldn't imagine why it was hanging around basically a field. And that was more confusing to me than anything else. But if it was part of this, you're being observed, and that's why it was there, then that had a reason, and I felt better about it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what that is. Now, my wife is not relieved by this. She's a little concerned about it, but I'm okay with it. It checks boxes for me of explanation of things. And I'm more skeptical about the triangle craft being U.S. military, but it could be. But who knows? Yeah, I'm more thinking that that's not, but whatever.
Yep. How do you reconcile? So this is a huge question, and this is advice giving. I'm asking you to give advice to people who have gone through hypnosis. How do you reconcile an experience that's very dreamlike? It's strange. It's providing real information to you. How do you reconcile all of that? Like this is provided information, the pieces of the puzzle for you from childhood experiences and onward, but it's also at the same time in this strange way. So like, are you picking and choosing? How is that discerned? Do the memories, does the communication feel different? And specifically, I'm wanting you to speak about your process of discernment and working with the material? Because some people say, oh, you go under hypnosis, everything is true, right? But my personal hypothesis is you have to work with it like a dream, and sometimes it reveals extremely potent knowledge. Like in the
Yeah.
case of, this was a research experience for you that feels like it's absolutely true, but it's communicated through a dreamlike imagery or something like that. So what was your process like, and how do you reconcile those variety of experiences? Yeah.
I think, well, one thing to point out was after our first hypnosis session, I came back in the living room, was talking with my wife, and she said, I've never seen you this relaxed before.
Yeah.
And it was peaceful. I just felt very peaceful about it. And it was like, I just feel like when things happened or when things came out, like I said, they kind of checked a box. They kind of resonated in me that these things are true, or these things are a metaphor pertaining to a true thing. I didn't feel like anything was false. I just felt like the only difficulty I had sometimes was, is this a real thing? Like, or is this a thing couched in such a way to make me understand the concept behind it? And so that's like, when a week later I called you and said, hey, I had this feeling that the tree was actually like not just a metaphor for a tree, but a metaphor for the nervous system or life, a life tree, how, all that stuff. And that was like aha, now I got it. But I didn't have that at the time that we had the hypnosis. I had this feeling that, I think I even said, or my higher self said, because you were asking questions about the tree, specific questions about the tree. And I think my higher self kind of impatiently said, it's a metaphor. Like, don't get caught up in that it's the tree. Yeah. So that was interesting. I remember that part because I thought, oh yeah, it's just a metaphor. It's meaning something. It isn't an actual tree, obviously. So anyway, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think I'm an analytical person. I'm also a creative person. So I weighed everything in my mind and thought, does this seem right to me? And it basically was on a gut level. I felt like some things were true, or if they weren't true, they were a metaphor that delivered a truth. I didn't think that they were false. So, I didn't have any feel like there was false things. I had skepticism of my own explanations of things when you would ask me and I was under. I would have that thing. But afterwards, I didn't feel like anything. In fact, I felt like it really revealed a lot about my life that I'd been confused about. Not just the events that I had with the UFOs, but things in my life that I'd gone through and what they mean. So, so how do I discern that? I don't know. I just kind of go by my gut. I mean, just some things just seem absolutely spot on, like scary spot on with my life. And other things seem more hazy. And I just kind of felt like those were more metaphors or trying to get me to understand some other truth about it.
Yeah. Great. That's a beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. In terms of your, so you mentioned your wife a couple times. She said, "Oh wow, you looked more relaxed than ever." Like, and so for me, as a practitioner, I go, "How are they dealing in their body? Are they embodying their consciousness? Their peace, love, and unity consciousness is embodied here and now." That's one of the things I talk about as a thing I look to. Like if someone's more anxious or more amped up or not present, like that's important for me to know. And it's like I go, okay, we're on the right path if people in your life are saying these things. So she shared some of these experiences with you. Yes. She's seen the relaxation afterwards, but you mentioned she may or may not buy into the ET.
She's afraid to. She's afraid to. I don't think that she dismisses it out of hand. I think she made the comment one time. She goes, well, okay, so you're chosen, but why are they bothering me about it? Kind of like, why am I involved in this? Yeah. Because she saw the things and she's like, why am I seeing these things then? And I think that she naturally has more skepticism and because the other things in my life didn't happen to her. So, but she's very supportive. I don't mean that, but I just mean that she doesn't want to think it's true because she doesn't like the idea of aliens messing with us, I think is what it comes down to.
Okay. Great. And I think a lot of people actually share that fear is that these are really on scene. They're mysterious. The crafts are weird. They're surrounded by misinformation campaigns. They absolutely demonstrate a sense of power over reality in a way that like
Yeah.
you can't deny. If you can deny, but it's there. So what would you say to anyone that has that sort of fear around, are they messing with us, why are they messing with us, sort of hesitation, which is a very rightful place to be in without having more experiences or testimony. And so in this time you can share testimony of your experience, even as to,
Right.
hey, it's okay, or any thoughts that you have or anything like that.
I don't know if I have the definitive answer for that, for the people that are having that concern. I think I believe people that say they've been through various things, and I believe that they have trauma from it. I don't disbelieve them. I just know that that didn't happen to me. I didn't have a traumatic experience. I had curious experiences. I had things that like, what the heck was that? Kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
I didn't. But maybe that's me, because maybe that has to do with why they're studying me. I didn't have an abrasive rejection of it. I don't think I've ever had that. I think I've always kind of felt that they were there in some capacity. And so maybe that's part of it for me. But I think if you hadn't had that kind of curiosity about them that was benign, a benign curiosity about them,
Yeah.
that you might have a more fearful reaction. And I wonder too if sometimes some of these fearful reactions or traumatic reactions come from a point of misunderstanding, that they're not really understanding what's going on. And so, but that's not right of me to say, because I don't recall being abducted. So it's easy for me to say, hey, it's a piece of cake, but I didn't have these other experiences. So I might think differently if that was the case. And I don't know why I would be different from them. I don't. I know what he said. I know Aaron said, because I'm part of a group of people that's part of his pet project, of that he feels like we're going to be more enlightened than other people when something big happens, whatever that is. And I've thought about that too. I thought, is the big thing that they're just going to finally reveal that they're here and, kind of not take over necessarily, but, no question, they're here standing, talking to us. And that some people are just going to freak out, and other people like me just be going, oh, okay, they're finally coming out and talking to us, kind of a thing. I don't know. That's a mystery, but so I don't dismiss anyone's fear. I think that's valid. But I think my impression is that even those people that had some kind of traumatic thing, that there may or may not have been another purpose for it, but they're remembering the trauma of it and not the purpose for it. But I don't know.
Yep. Well, the understanding I have is that these experiences are dreamlike in nature, meaning like even nightmares have a communication of healing, insight, and transformation. They communicate wisdom, they communicate other things. But when we're attached to the dream body in that nightmare, things are really intense, and it's like we're attacked by monsters and it's dramatic. But if we can get some space and look at it from a different dimension, even, then we go, oh, okay, I see that monster over there represents, I don't know, my fear of my third grade teacher or whatever, like that sort of thing. And if I worked with it, I might go up and out of it. It's not to say that nightmare experience is not real. It is very real, but in different contexts that can mean different things and can actually be metaphor. But the interesting thing around these phenomena is they break into the waking world, like your experiences with the shadow, the craft and stuff like that. It's an in-between kind of going back and forth, it seems to me. What about your second session? Why did you reach out and what happened there?
Hold on a second.
Sure.
I wanted the second session because I think after the first session, you had mentioned astral travel, and you said that you thought that I would be good to try that, or that would be helpful to me or whatever. And I agreed, even though I never tried it. And so I started trying it and doing different things, but I was not achieving any kind of success with it. And so I thought, well, hey, maybe we can have another session, talk to my higher self, and see if we can't figure out what the problem is with me trying to do this. Because I felt like I was ready to do this spiritually. I feel like I was at the point where I'm examining my life in a lot of different ways. And I really felt like it was something if not needed, I wanted to do, and to get that kind of perspective. Also, I believed it more now, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think the first session kind of joggled my mind a little bit more towards believing things I, kind of doubted a little bit. But anyway, so the second session, or at least my purpose, was to try to figure out what my blockage was or what I can do to fix it or whatever. So.
And we had an update on it today. That do you mind sharing the update?
No. I'm still having difficulty. But I am having some success at a stage in that I can feel myself be weightless. And a couple of times I was able to mentally make myself feel weightless and then not weightless, and then back and forth to kind of like, oh, can I do this? And I did that while I was laying in bed. And so I've been listening to meditation tapes and stuff that are supposed to help you with astral projection. And I tried different brands of those, and I haven't, to my perception, I haven't succeeded in traveling. And you and I had a conversation about it, and you were saying that it's possible that I am traveling. It's just not inscribing itself in my memory in this body. And if that's true, it makes sense, because this process of me trying to do it, my dreams have become much more detailed, much more interesting. I mean, I started writing a dream diary, and it was like, after a while I gave up, because I'm thinking, oh my God, there's too many of these really amazing dreams. And I was also able to lucid dream a couple of times, where I was able to be, I'm in a dream, I'm going to change this, or I was able to go back to sleep and re-enter the same dream and say, now we're going to do it this way or something, which I understand is a marker for progress. But I haven't had an astral travel thing that I can recall. But it's very likely I'm doing it, I'm just not remembering it.
Yeah.
So, but the second session was, we were trying to explore that. And so again, you asked me for a dream, and I'd had a dream that morning, which is a bizarre dream, but I had a dream that I was in like a saloon, and there was a wall that was like penetrable, but nobody else could see that it was except for me. And I think I had a friend who could see it. And that if you went through this hole in the wall, it was like going through into another dimension or another portal type thing. And it was just this vast sea of asphalt with a couple of block buildings in the back. And there was a storm, and lightning would strike the asphalt, and where it struck the asphalt, it would coalesce and turn into something. And that I was going around and collecting those things, and they're supposed to mean something, or at least that's what came out in the hypnosis. I didn't really have that concept in the dream as far as that they were supposed to mean something. I just was picking up stuff that was created by the lightning hitting the this big gray plane of asphalt. And so you put me under, and that was our intro into me going under. And I remember you asked me questions about it, and more details came out, and I was like, I had things in my belt, my tool belt, that allowed me to analyze whether these things were valuable or not, which is kind of interesting. And then apparently I would determine their value and then go back through to the saloon, and then my friend would sell them or something like that. I forget now exactly the details, but so some of the things were like, I picked up a thing that had letters on it. I have yet to figure out what those letters mean. I've thought about it, but they don't mean anything to me yet. Another one was, it was an Indian drum with a pattern painted on the Indian drum. And I have been connected, or trying to connect, with the indigenous community since I started my spiritual journey, because I feel like a lot of what they do in their community is a lot of what I feel like I'm trying to do. And plus, just I'm connecting with them because I feel bad about what's happened to them and what continues to happen to them. And I've always had a place in my heart for people that are going through bad things. Um, so, and this is about the time that the residential schools, unmarked graves was happening, or crime scenes is a better term for it. But anyway, so I believe since that session that was meant to be that somehow what I need to learn or find out is connected with what the indigenous community is going through. I don't know if that means that I need to connect with them actually, or just to understand what they're going through and that sort of thing. But so I remember that part of getting into the dream, and then I remember that was the gateway in, and I remember too I got impatient. Part of me got impatient because you were asking all these questions about the dream, and I was like, going, "That's not where I want to be. I want to be somewhere else." And I remember that. And I think you asked me, "Where do you want to go?" And I wanted to go back to the mountain to ask Aaron questions again. And this time, Aaron was really persnickety, and he kept trying to walk away. He kept trying to say, "Okay, that's it. I'm done." And I remember you were saying after the session, maybe we were connecting with the real life alien, because he was like, "I got to go. I got things to do." But I remember I was asking questions like, "What? How do I fix this, or how do I get through this blockage of being able to travel?" And he gave me this imagery, or I gave myself the imagery of a really huge buck deer, a real masculine, heavy duty, powerful deer, and the antlers were glowing. So, and then somehow in the session, I don't know if Aaron told me that or I told me that, but somehow it was like, this is your higher self. This deer is your higher self. You are more powerful than you realize. I think was what they're trying to say. Because I don't think of myself as very powerful or whatever. And they're saying, no, this is the thing. And then I think Aaron said, I'm a little fuzzier on this, but I think Aaron said that you're going to have a hard time achieving the astral travel that you're trying to achieve, but that once you do it, you're going to bust through, like with this deer in a china shop. You're just going to bust through the process, and then after that, it's going to be amazingly easy for you, and it's going to be a thing that's really, you're going to like basically overpower the blockage, I guess. It's the way I'm interpreting that. That you're going to basically just enough of that. I'm going to do this, and then once I do it, then I'm going to be one of the more powerful people at doing it. Which again, I have trouble believing that, but that seems to be what he was saying. So, and then I think you and I worked on a metaphor for turning a switch in a shed. It was like an old-fashioned Frankenstein switch, and then I was supposed to turn the switch, and that was going to make it easier, but that hasn't fixed it yet. So,
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, oftentimes I will invite people because I find that they have, in terms of relating to these phenomena and things like that, there's a kind of incoherent pattern, like yes and no. Like, I know I'm powerful, but I don't want to accept it, sort of thing. So to provide a metaphor, to have a ritual expression of consent and invitation and permission to really embody that transformation is potent in some way. Oftentimes those simply lead to more dream experiences. Have you been working with a buck at all in terms of your practices, the imagery of the buck?
I've tried it a couple of
Right.
times. I've tried different brands of meditations. So for astral travel. And so there's a part where you are first relaxing or whatever, or they're getting to you relaxed. There's breathing and that sort of thing. And I have tried on a few occasions visualizing either the deer that I'm looking at the deer, or that I'm the deer or something. Um, and it's interesting, but it hasn't, like I said, resulted in me remembering any of these travels. But maybe it's that I'm actually traveling. I don't know. But I have tried them a couple of times, but I didn't feel like there was any difference in the attempt than when I do it without it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think again, metaphor. I think it's more telling me that I have the power to do it, telling me that I have a lot of natural power, like environmental natural power to do this. And it's just me getting past it. And so far I haven't. So,
Okay. May I make a recommendation or an invitation?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. So I see you in your astral body or the spirit body or whatever it is that does this travel as the buck or something like that. You said this is your higher self. So we may even make the assumption that ever since you started trying that, you have been embodying that form in the dream, in the astral plane, and that bringing it into integration with your waking self is the thing. So I would actually invite a sense of working with, like, it's almost going to be crude in the, like, it's like draw an image or make an altar or something to the deer image in the waking world, not associated with moments of astral projection meditation, but in your waking consciousness. So the more mundane consciousness you can get, and then work from that place of drawing the deer or making a place that you, I mean, you can give offerings or whatever, like food or I don't know, incense, whatever is meaningful to you. And so in that way, you're bringing the imagery of your higher self into the waking consciousness. And that might even serve as a bridge of memory and experience between the two different aspects. Because I got huge chills when you were talking about the buck full body sort of thing. And that's one of the things I look to as a practitioner to go like, oh, here's something here is happening.
Oh, just now you mean, or back when we
Yeah,
had
just
session?
now. No, just
Ah,
now. Yeah, it was powerful. So,
ah.
yeah,
And that's the impression I got, was power, just like raw power.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll see.
Great,
I'll try that. That's a good
good.
idea.
So we've covered a
Yeah.
lot of ground in this interview right now. We've covered the two sessions, the extraordinary experiences that brought you to hypnosis, what's happening now in your life, some advice. Is there anything else you would like to say in this context you feel would be of benefit to anyone listening? Anything like that?
I feel like through this process, the hypnosis process, but also I guess my own process, I genuinely feel like that what we see is not what's real, that this world is a simulation or something, and that there's a real spiritual thing that we're all involved in, and that the more you connect with that spiritual thing, the more in alignment your life is going to be. That's what I feel. um, and I'm just clumsy at getting there, but I think that I'm more and more convinced that that's the case. I just feel like there's no, and actually there is something, when I was a kid and I was going to church all the time and everything. And I remember one time someone asked me, I don't go to church now, but when I was a kid, they said, well, what do you think God is? And I remember I said, on my own, from my own interpretation, and then decades later, I hear it described by someone else. But I said, I think what it is that God created the universe, but he's perfect. So he can only view it through his own perfect lens. So he broke himself up into pieces, individual imperfect pieces, and then let us experience creation with our own particular take on what we're perceiving. And then in the end, he'll gather us all back together, and then the view of the creation will be magnified by all these different viewpoints coming together in one viewpoint. That was kind of how I felt. I didn't have any, there's nothing in the Bible that says that. There's nothing that intimates that, but I felt like that was more real to me than what they were saying in the Bible. And also it felt logical. It
Yeah.
felt to me like that makes more sense to me. And then now I'm going through this spiritual journey. A lot of people are saying, there's an all where we're all from, and that we come down into the simulation and then we go back with what we learned. And I'm thinking that's the same concept I had as a kid. So it all seems to be coming together. I don't know why.
Yes, yeah. I think of it sometimes as like the dreaming mind, like you're one mind, you go to bed, all of a sudden you have this scenario happening and you there's multiple characters, each with their own perspective. But then when you wake up, you realize, oh, that was happening in my mind or heart or spirit or something. I actually believe you can astral travel, so it's a little bit more complicated metaphor, but ultimately you can look at each of those different perspectives as expressive of yourself, and gain that healing insight and transformation that comes from dream. So that's what I expect with this simulated universe experience, that is ultimately leading towards a beautiful experience of like that reintegration or that gathering up you were mentioning.
Yeah. And that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't see why we have consciousness if not that.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Thank you. That's a great place to end the interview. Is there any final words you'd like to share before I turn off the recording?
I would say if anyone is considering getting hypnotized, don't have a lot of experience besides working with you, but that you're very easy to work with. I find your voice very calm, and I find that your method of inquisitating what's happening is very, very sort of hands off, but at the same time guiding of what you're doing. And I felt like that made it a much more positive experience. I expected to be more of a cold experience, and I felt like it was a much more of a warm experience of this is a friend of mine that I'm going through this with. That's what I felt like. So I don't know. That's an ad for you, I guess, but I think you do a good job.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me. So, well, may this interview be of benefit to anyone who listens to it. Thank you. I'm going to turn off the recording and then we can debrief. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you for watching that interview with me and John H. I hope that is inspiring to you to go on your own inner journey of exploration, discovery, for the purposes of healing, insight, transformation, so that we can embody greater peace, love, and unity consciousness here and now on Earth. I want to talk a little bit about my offerings. I offer one-on-one sessions on a sliding scale donation. So if cash is an issue, please still just reach out to me. I offer session work in the modalities of depth hypnosis, beyond quantum healing, meditation instruction, spiritual counseling, and dream work. And I offer all of these in we can have it just one or all of them. The reason why we bring in meditation and spiritual counseling and dream work to the extraterrestrial contact experience, to the regression hypnosis experience, is because my belief is that we are, with these experiences, we're not necessarily invited to go into the memory, but we are invited to expand our psychic perceptions and capabilities and to create an environment within ourselves that we can integrate all of these strange and extraordinary means of knowledge, right? So that can involve meditation, that can involve psychic development, as in the case of John with the astral projection, that can involve dream work, or any number of the various things that I like to work with my clients. So all of the sessions begin with a free and no obligation consultation. And so that consultation involves a process of storytelling where I listen to your story. We have a discussion about how hypnosis can serve you. I answer any questions you might have. We establish a plan, we schedule sessions, then we invite an experience to happen and dream, a contact experience perhaps, a message, a synchronicity, something that'll help inform the work and really ground the work into your waking life experience. From there, we'll have this session. We establish an intention. We practice hypnosis, so you don't actually have to, start with your ET contact experience, missing time. We just practice, so you feel really confident and safe. Then we connect in with inner guidance. So you are the person who's guiding this situation, and we build rapport through this hypnotic practice. And then finally, we have the hypnotic experience to address your intention. At the end of the session, we do debrief. I offer my observations. We go through a process of interpreting what this session might mean. And then you're invited to have additional sessions. So depth hypnosis offers, usually a series of about 3 to 5 sessions. Beyond quantum healing is a single session, but I find that my clients like to repeat the sessions, as in the case of John. You'll have an integration period after any session. You sort of journal about it. You might have dreams. You might have thoughts. And then we have a follow-up where we can connect. You can reach out to me. I might reach out to you when I feel prompted to, where we can have perhaps a case study interview, or to see how you're doing, or to schedule additional sessions, or anything like that. I also offer group sessions. So the group sessions, there's an offering of study and practice on some Wednesday nights at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can get to, these are all live broadcasts on YouTube, which are recorded. You can go to the recordings. They're as meaningful as the day they're recorded, but they're live because afterwards you're invited to a Zoom room small group experience. So that may or may not be part of your practice, but if you want to connect with a community, you can do so after the live broadcasts of these group sessions. Wednesday nights are study and practice, where we deep dive into hypnosis or dream topics. And then Sunday mornings are about music, reading, contemplation, meditation on a weekly theme. And so for more information on that, you can go to cosmicdreamsanctuary.org/groups. There are many ways to stay in touch with me, and I would invite you to find one that works for you. The website has a lot of information, cosmicdreamsanctuary.org. I have a Facebook page. Just search for Cosmic Dream Sanctuary. YouTube is likely the best place for you to encounter content from Cosmic Dream Sanctuary. You can just find us by searching for Cosmic Dream Sanctuary on YouTube. And then if you want to get email notifications when we run groups, if there's any offerings or anything like that, you can sign up at the bottom of the website, cosmicdreamsanctuary.org. Or if you want to simply get in contact with me through email, you can email me at daniel@cosmicdreamsanctuary.org. I look forward to speaking with you. I love talking to people, even if nothing leads to a session or anything like that. Since I do my work by donation sliding scale, really I have to love every single step of the process. And one of the things I absolutely love is the consultation. It is the experience of hearing and feeling the stories that you have to share. So again, thank you for being with me, and I look forward to speaking with you.